What makes a good story? I watch a lot of Netflix and stuff like that with my wife, and a lot of it's shit. It's just trash. And I always try to figure out what is it about a story that I like or I don't like. Because it's not always like the characters or the dialogue. There are stories that I like that have poorly written characters. There are stories that I like that have poorly written dialogue. There are stories that I like that have cheap cinematography. So, what is it? And I recently kind of came to this unified hypothesis about it. It's that a story, whether this is a book or a movie or anything, is about characters first and foremost. If you don't have characters, and you don't have a main character, at least you don't have a story. Now your character needs a conflict too. You can have a character versus character conflict. You can have a character versus self conflict. You have a character versus environment conflict. But this character needs to make decisions about that conflict. These decisions must have consequences. If the decisions do not have consequences, then they're not interesting. Here, I'll give an example. I'll give two examples of things I watched last night, actually. And the decisions need to reveal something important about the character. And this is why I like Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad is all about decisions that the characters make. But I watched a couple things last night. I tried to watch Hannibal, which is the Netflix series adaptation of Hannibal Lecter, Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon, whatever. Which I quite like that series. And I watched the first episode, and I'm looking at this protagonist, and I'm like, there's nothing very interesting about him. He doesn't. I could criticize the character for a while, but the one thing is, he didn't make any interesting decisions in the first episode except for picking up a dog off the street. It was a completely inconsequential decision. It just didn't matter at all to the plot. It's like, okay, cool. He's like Mr. Nice Guy, take care of dogs. And that does show a little bit about his character, but there's no consequence to it. The only interesting character in that first episode was Hannibal Lecter. And suddenly I'm put in a position where I like the bad guy a lot more than the good guy. And I just don't really want the good guy to have screen time anymore, And, people say, oh, well, you only watched the first episode. You only watched the first hour. That's the first half of a movie. Some movies are about 75% done an hour in, right? So if I'm not locked in, if you don't have a good pilot, if that first hour doesn't have a series of good decisions. Okay, next one I watched was Rebel Moon, which is this kind of take on the Star Wars sort of genre. Really, 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 really cool. The very first thing that happens is these series of decisions made by a father and his son, and the bad guy puts his son in a position where he makes him make a decision to kill his father. So his son fucking beats his father to death with this bone staff. It's this really hardcore, crazy decision. And it shows a lot about his character. It shows a lot about his father's character. It showed a lot about the character of the entire family. And you can tell that the consequences of that decision are probably going to last for the rest of the movie and the next movie. That's good writing. So if you are writing a thing, it is about the characters and it is about the external decisions that they make and how that reflects on their internal psyche. And most importantly, the consequences of those decisions and the effects those decisions have on the events that are unfolding in relationship to the conflict.